Jacob, good to meet you, man. And thank you for joining us to have this conversation. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, Evan. Really
Yeah,
excited to have a chat here. It's been a little bit since I've talked to anybody about the Here's a Taurus, so I'm excited to get back into it.
yeah, for sure, man. We don't have a ton of listeners, but we do have a couple of local dedicated nerds that will make it at least this far into the video. So if you want, you can say hi, Cole.
Hi, Cole,
Um,
and other dedicated nerds.
Yes. Um, so for those of us that are watching this or listening to this, this is Jacob Duerksen. He is the author of Heroes of Tara. It's a tabletop RPG. How long ago did you author this book?
It was published back in October of 2024. I was working on
October,
it since. Oh, go
and so
ahead.
you were writing it then, I assume, in like 2023
I was working on it since the COVID shutdowns in 21.
and 21. So this has been a project for around 5 or 6 years in the making, huh?
Going on. Yeah, it was kind of in pre-form long before then as well, but it really took off during the COVID shutdowns when, had nothing else to do. So that's how I occupied my time. And at first I
Yeah,
thought it was just going to be a homebrew thing, but, before long, I knew I had something on my hands.
excellent. I love that. You know, the whole what we've been doing with this podcast and specifically with these interviews is we've been trying to talk to people about how and when they took an idea from this thing like a figment, like an idea like, oh, I love to do this, and then how they transitioned that from an idea that they had into something that they were actually doing with their time. And then it's even cooler to have a discussion about whenever you started doing that and it was really happening, like what that process was like, and then, if it's going to go any further or, and the whole point of the podcast is to put that kind of cool information out there so that people can hopefully listen to it and maybe gather some kind of information that might help them actualize an idea of their own, something that they've been wanting to do. And this is a perfect example because how many people have had a really cool idea for something tabletop RPG related and been like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome if we made our own XYZ or published our own adventure or and then like and how many of us have those ideas and then just find it really difficult to gain that energy to start working on it or to just actualize it into a real thing. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. And you say in 2021, COVID shut down, and in 2021 and two, COVID shutdown was starting, and you had some extra time on your hand. Why Heroes of Tara? What made you start working on an RPG?
I'd been a long time gamer that by that point. I'm very fortunate to have a long established home group here of friends that I play with in person. Of
Hmm.
course, wasn't even meeting with them at the time due to the shutdowns. But I had just started doing what I thought was going to be a little piece of homebrew that wouldn't really make it beyond my, group's table. Maybe it would be something that the guys would be interested in for, maybe not, a few one shots or a little campaign of a few sessions. Uh, but then I just kept writing and writing, and then before long it was 100 pages, 200 pages, and I thought, well, this is for more than just my group now. Why Heroes of Tara? Well, first off, Heroes of Tara Player's Guide. The Heroes of Tara Player's Guide is a fifth edition adaptation. Well, for fifth edition D&D. Sorry, stumbling over my words there a little bit.
No, no, yeah.
Yeah, but adaptation for fifth edition D&D, formerly through the OGL, but ever since that, now under Creative Commons, ever since the controversy that is.
Oh,
And it is all about Irish mythology and history, entirely dedicated to bringing to life and simulating the aesthetics, the tone, and the themes of that, ancient Iron Age world. Uh,
Celtic type vibes, or I see you saying Irish, and I know for me sometimes I kind of associate Irish with Celtic, but is there a
yeah.
distinction for you there?
Oh, yeah. Well, there's Irish mythology, you might say, is like a subset of what people would refer to as Celtic mythology.
Okay.
So yeah, very
So it
thoroughly
is like
dedicated.
specifically Irish mythology.
Yes, yeah, yeah. It's not just inspired by the themes or aesthetics, but it is entirely and directly based on those original stories in the source material.
Oh, cool.
It's actually bringing to life the world of those old stories. Irish
Can you
mythology.
maybe list some characters for me that might be notable from those mythologies,
Yeah,
or are they all pretty obscure characters?
the two biggest characters that you might know from Irish mythology, kind of their Odysseus and Hercules, are Fionn McCool and Cuchulainn. Uh,
Interesting. So there are parallels in Irish mythology to Hercules. Is that what you're
very
saying?
very generally, I mean, there's some academic comparisons that could be made in like a very broad sense that they all stem from that Indo-European cultural group. Like all of these mythologies ultimately do lead back to one source way back in like the Bronze Age past or something like that.
And did you
But
have any background in these? I mean, talking to you, you sound like pretty educated on the subject. Is it just a passion of yours, like these mythologies, or do you have any background in it?
professionally, I am an archaeologist.
I was sensing it, bro. Like, yeah, the way you were talking about history was like, I was like, this man,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, okay,
I'm writing what I know. My day work is mainly concerned with the colonial and prehistoric period of North America. So I am not
fascinating.
directly working with Irish Iron Age or anything European or anything like
Hmm.
that. The Celtic, Irish mythology, Iron Age stuff is really where my personal interests come into it. This is the
Okay.
stuff that I study on my off time just for
Yeah,
fun.
I love that. So I feel like I'm seeing kind of like a shape here. So the COVID shutdown happens. Had you been kind of like forming this play setting in your mind over a couple of years leading up to 2021? Like had this been something that you kind of were daydreaming about and in any capacity?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Years and years ago, like a decade even before I started on this, when I was just starting out as a gamer in the D&D world, my first ever attempt at DMing was my own overly ambitious homebrew, basically like zero point 0.5 rendition of Heroes of Tara, where I was
Wow.
trying to do a whole historically grounded and inspired setting of the entire British Isles, not just Ireland. And I was
So
just
you
trying to,
kind of started off kind of crafting a
yeah.
real world setting into a 5e like applicable setting.
This was back in 3.5, but yeah,
Okay.
for D&D, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
This
you
is
were kind of
way
just
back.
creating your own setting and so you were kind of like and it started off as kind of a more historically grounded setting
Yeah.
or
Yeah, it was historically grounded in like the loose sense that just about any kind of historical inspiration that I could pull off, I just crammed in there. Like it had the Irish mythology, it had Roman history, it had Welsh mythology, and it was fun
interesting.
for the campaign, but way too big for what Heroes of Tara eventually became. With Heroes of Tara, I kind of zeroed in on specifically Ireland and Irish narratives and culture as distinct from, say, Welsh narratives and culture. Because, there's this overarching category of Celtic, but there's a lot of nuance and, cultural distinction within that very broad category. Celtic is a messy term, it's very amorphous and vague in many ways. So I
Interesting.
tend to just try to be more specific, like, referring to Irish mythology, for example.
Very interesting. So you have these roots in history and archaeology, and that's kind of your passion, is what I'm hearing. Is that kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
accurate?
Yep.
And then you've got this love of gaming and tabletop RPGs. The COVID shutdown starts to happen. You start to spend some of your leisure time like typing all this out because you've had it in your head for X time, and it sounds
Yeah.
like maybe you're starting to plan like a bigger campaign for your group. You're gonna like is that kind of was that the initial spawn for starting to write? Is you were gonna like do a bigger game in your setting?
Yeah, there was, the idea that I might play it at some point, but my group is a busy group where everybody's a DM and we're always rotating each other's games and everybody has an idea for
Okay.
something.
So
So,
it was purely just kind of hobby time. You were just like,
yeah,
I'm gonna write this down.
I was thinking maybe I'll play this on a table with my friends someday, but I wasn't really like betting on it, because we just had a lot of
Okay.
other campaigns going. So, yeah, this was ultimately just for my own enjoyment.
I find that so fascinating because you're not the only person who I've been having these conversations a pretty good bit with people, and you're not the only person who's saying that. It almost seems like the more casual people are about when they're approaching these swan song like side projects, the more like I don't care if it succeeds that people are about it, it seems like the more likely it is to catch.
Yeah, yeah, it needs that
Maybe it has
passion.
something to do with the fact that like the motivation is there. Like people are doing it not because they want it to catch and not because they want to make money off of it, but they're just purely just doing it because they actually really enjoy it. And I think there's some kind of a resonant difference in the products that people produce when they're depending on what their motivation was, and people just sense it, and they can sense it in the product like they sense it in my story, like they sense that I did not make this shop with the intention of trying to monetize their hobbies. I actually made the shop with the intention of supporting them in their hobbies and making the stuff that they're interested in more accessible, cheaper, easier to have friends to play with, and a good place to play. That's 100% my motivation. And people sense that, and then they want to support it, and I've been seeing that growth in my game shop just like exponentially right out of the gates.
Hmm.
So it sounds like a similar story for you. The next thing I'm interested in would be, so you start writing. I've written a couple of like one shots myself. How did you go about organizing the information? Like, what was the first? This is a great question. I'm pretty interested in myself, actually. Like, what did you think was the most important thing to have on the first like 5 pages of your book?
First 5 pages. Well, the way it turned out, about the first 20 pages is, you might be able to guess from the tone I've been putting off so far, basically nothing but academic preamble of,
Cool.
yeah, just kind of laying out like, hey, what are the Celts? What's this book about? What are the sources? How am I interpreting these sources? I'm basically just kind of laying out to everybody for like the first 20 pages, like, hey, this is what this book is, this is where it's coming from, what the sources are, how I put it all together. And then we get into about 60 pages of lore. And then finally, somewhere around page 70, the game rules finally kick in. So,
Okay.
very heavily front loaded with a lot of information. I guess that tells you where my priorities lie, because
Well,
I'm very proud of the game design and the classes, and there's so many elements of game design that go into it. But the primary point throughout the entire book, from beginning to end, is providing kind of a portal for people who may have never heard about Irish mythology before, who maybe
mm.
have heard a little bit about it and they want to learn more, because it's a pretty obscure topic. It's not as well known as, say, Greek or Norse mythology.
So
So
would you say that a person who plays in your campaign setting, hopefully with like a dungeon master who's like done their work and read your book, and would you say that they're going to learn anything about Irish and Celtic lore and mythology?
absolutely, they're going to learn a lot. This is probably the best and most fun and engaging and immersive crash course on Irish mythology, and possibly even Iron Age Irish mythology, that society rather, that you're going to find. Uh, I
Do you
really
think it would
just
ever serve for an educator? Like if someone was trying to educate a classroom about these topics, so like would there be a way an educator could use your product here to make that a fun process? Or I mean, and admittedly, it could be a little difficult, but do you think that there's potential there?
Yeah, absolutely. Myself, I try to play it humble, and I'm a little bit hesitant to put myself forward too much as like this reliable source of academic information, because, disclaimer, I'm not a scholar with a master's degree. I may be an archaeologist, but I still only have an undergrad, etc.
Mhm.
But I
Right, we
have
love
had,
underdogs here.
yeah, but I have had people who are more qualified than myself, actual Gaelic scholars, Gaelic being another word for Irish culture,
Hmm.
and Irish storytellers who are immersed in the mythology, just people from the culture itself. I've heard back from many different sources that the information I'm putting out there is sound, and a lot of these people, they do tell me that some educators have told me that they do want to use it as a resource to reach out to
Super
their
cool.
students. Yeah,
Well, I'm loving that tone personally, as like as a person who just really loves tabletops. I'm loving, I don't want to use the word nonfiction because obviously it's a fantasy setting, but I'm loving the like kind of like nonfiction kind of roots that it sounds like you placed everything in, and which because And sorry to go on, but I think it's cool that your book sounds like it's lore heavy because I think people that turn to things like Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop RPGs, I think one of the reasons they're going to that is because they love the density of information and the depth of information. I know that's what drew me. Like when I first started playing D&D, I was like, "Oh my God, like there's an infinite amount of stuff for me to like learn and get and absorb and get better at." And the more lore I know about this universe, the more my players can do. And so there was a use for the information. Like the more I was like learning about these weird myths and stories for even just the Forgotten Realms, the better of a dungeon master I was becoming. And I just love like not only learning but having a direct outlet for the information to like get to use it and like enhance my players' games that way with like cool tie-ins to stuff they love and or just meeting a character that has been present in the lore for so many years and has been written like Mordenkainen's a great example. Players love it when they run into Mordenkainen.
Oh yeah,
And then they love it even more when they get to learn more about Mordenkainen and it's canon. You know what I mean? They love that.
oh yeah.
So it sounds like your book leans into that, and that would be a big selling point for me as a person looking at new campaign settings. And actually, the fact that you're rooting it in real world lore would be a big selling point for me because I don't necessarily have the time to pick up a whole new fantasy universe. But if I was like, oh, that'd be cool if I'm learning about like some more textural, like real world ish stuff, and maybe I do have like brain space and time for that.
Yeah,
But sorry to
absolutely.
ramble.
No, no, I hear you. And oh, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. So for
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
was going to respond to you, so you just go keep on trucking, go right ahead.
Well, I have more questions. So like,
Yeah.
so the organization, it sounds like you went lore heavy in the front, and then let's talk about the actual game for a minute. What are there any mechanics in your game that separate it from traditional fifth edition D&D?
Oh yeah, just tons of new mechanics and just rule subsets that I have inserted in here, all
Hmm.
for the purpose of simulating this very unique setting, this very unique time and place and culture. For instance, this if you know anything about classical sources on Celtic history and whatnot. You might have heard that it was a kind of common practice among them to be to go headhunting. They were headhunters. So headhunting is actually a mechanic in this game where you can actually claim the heads of defeated enemies, and those heads will have magical effects that
Oh,
were pretty
wow.
much work like enchanted items. There's a chariot driving. There are involved mechanics for actual curses with consequences and just everything to kind of bring that folklore element to life. There are even more. Like I completely replaced the gold, silver, and copper coinage economy with a cashless barter economy that is based on the value of cattle, which is accurate to the setting and whatnot. So,
Wow, that's so cool.
oh yeah,
Um,
I could go on.
and so some cool new mechanics. Maybe another question I would love to ask is, is there I've heard you mention classes earlier, so you have some unique classes and subclasses in your game?
Oh yeah, there's everything. This is a complete top to bottom rebuild of fifth edition. Classes, races. In this book, the races are referred to as tribes. Backgrounds, feats, everything that a player needs to build a character, along with the lore, setting info, everything. It's right in here. So
And could you
yeah.
share a couple of like the now? So it sounds like a rewrite, right? So did you like retool some of the traditional classes and then add some, or did you just retool all of them?
Nope. All of the old classes are tossed out completely. This book is not at all compatible with foundational 5e classes.
Right,
Fighters
so a
are
person
very
should
useful.
not try to like roll up a bard rogue,
No,
like a
yeah,
5e bard rogue and roll in there.
nope. The classes in this game are kind of balanced to their own gear in a way. They're all imbalanced with one another, but I don't believe they would quite be imbalanced with main 5e. And each of them are very distinctly and almost kind of exclusively based in this setting, where it's like you can't just lift the classes out of this book and put them in another setting because
So they admittedly kind of aren't super compatible either way. So I also
no,
wouldn't really want to roll up a class from your book and go play Curse of Strahd.
You probably could, but I don't no guarantees on how that would work out for you. Frankly, I
Do you
think
think a dungeon master could pretty easily like kind of like buff or kind of augment some of the classes to suit like some of their other campaigns if people just really like your tone?
if anything, they might have to nerf the classes.
Nerf the classes, they're a little
Yeah,
too strong. Perfect. All right, then it sounds like they'll roll over great. They can. My players are welcome to bring OP
yeah,
classes into my games because
yeah.
then I
These
just give them OP monsters and I
Yeah, these
win
are meant
anyway.
to be like characters inspired by mythology. They're mythical heroes, right? I know when you hear that it's like a historically based setting, the typical assumption is that it might be like a down low, grim and gritty and grounded kind of setting, maybe a little bit
Mhm,
more of an OSR vibe kind of thing.
mhm.
I've had a lot of disappointed OSR people come my way, and when they discover that it's 5e, they turn away in disgust. But this is a kind of a mythic high fantasy setting based in an Iron Age world where even if they're living
Yeah.
in like straw thatched huts, they're still getting up to incredible heroic feats. So
Well, that brings up another question. This is a personal question too. So, like, in one of my grievances with a lot of role playing games, and I actually often solve this issue in my games with some kind of a lore ad, which is like, and I think you'll agree, in some games, it can be very odd why characters go from being like level 1 to level 17 in a matter of like a month. It can be
mm,
very odd that these characters went from being like, Joe Schmo, I'm working on my mom's cabin this weekend, and then, oh, bandits, to like in game time, 3 months later, vanquishing a demigod.
right, yeah, yeah. The
Is
slime
there
to
any
God
kind of
curve is insane.
Right. Is there any kind of explanation for that inherently in your game? Which I don't think most games don't explain that in any kind of way. They kind of leave that on the dungeon master to come up with some kind of a lore reason why
Mm.
these characters are some kind of a chosen one or why they're gaining power so rapidly. Sometimes the games solve that, like the modules, but is there anything like that in your book?
Yeah, I'd say it's never explicitly addressed in such a way. There's never like an explanation given for that.
Hmm.
But the game's pacing is very different from your typical 5e game,
Hmm.
where it is going to be actually a bit more slow, a bit more drawn out, a bit more, uh, I guess you might
Gritty,
say,
maybe?
methodical. Methodical,
Hmm.
I guess, was the word I was reaching for. But the main reason for that is I have adjusted the rest times, where now a short rest takes 8 hours and a long rest takes 7 days. So
Yeah. I've
it's
seen some talk about those kinds of adjustments, and it kind of makes sense. Like, I think there's even an option in one of the DM's guides for like gritty realism, is what they call it, where they kind
mhm.
of make a similar adjustment like that. And I've done that in some of my games too. I've even in one of my games, I established that the long rest mechanic functioned because of the Sandman, who was this deity who essentially healed people overnight, and it was a well-known mechanic in the universe that like your superficial wounds will heal overnight. The Sandman comes and there's just
Yeah.
this magical energy that like just heals people kind of restoratively overnight. But in that game, the function of the long rest came into jeopardy because someone like broke into the Sandman. So there's a lot of lore behind it where like the Sandman was actually imprisoned, and the reason that long rests happen is because his sand was actually leaking out of his prison over time, and the players had to go and like put the Sandman back to sleep. And um, but so I'm always looking for cool stuff like that, like just good reasons. But I love to hear that you kind of slowed down the pace because that's another good way to solve it is just make these campaigns take more like 6 months to a year, and then there's maybe a little bit better explanation for this growth and power.
Yeah, it's that one simple adjustment changes so much about the game because I made reference to how powerful player classes are in this game, player characters in
Hmm.
general. Uh, this actually is a way of balancing that out, where when you make a long rest 7 days, that is a much larger time investment.
Hmm.
There's a common criticism that I and others have about 5e, where typical player group, the DMG suggests that that the DM presents about like what is it, 3 to 5 encounters every in-game day to a group.
That's it. That's
I don't know.
insanity.
I do not know a single DM who does that. The
Yeah, how
default
would you ever get through a travel session?
Right. But the typical default that I see a lot of DMs kind of falling into is just like one encounter per day. And what that allows is a typical 5e player group is able to take a long rest every night and freshen up after every single combat, and they're just starting every single
They're at
combat
max power
at
for every combat.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
So when that long rest is not just 8 hours, but it's 7 days, and they're going to have to like actually cool their heels for a while, and the world is moving on without them. Maybe the big bad evil guy is moving on with their plot or whatever while they're taking their rest. They can't afford to just take a rest every single time that they're 5 hit points down.
Right,
They're gonna
right.
have it becomes a matter of time management, resource management,
Mhm.
endurance. So even if these characters are a bit more powerful, they also have to weigh that against actually getting anything done.
Yeah, and
And
well, that's where the gameplay with these games is, like
yeah.
if all you're doing is going straight from like, all that resource management, time management, political management, spatial management, all of that, that's where I think the real meat of these TTRPG games is, like the actual combats and the skirmishes, like those are super fun and people love them, but if that's all you have, then
Mm-hmm.
really all you're doing is like playing kind of glorified chess with superpowers where your bishop can cast fireball.
You're absolutely
Um,
right.
and but then when you add in these elements of social interaction, space management, resource management, all that's where I feel like you get into like a really satisfying, immersive game where you're making these decisions that feel like they're affecting a whole reality, not just like the a dice roll.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
but
social interactions are another big essential part of the game that are not just kind of like this optional bit if your players happen to be into role play.
yeah,
So many times in so many settings, the actual culture, customs, or rules of the society in which the player characters are living are often so easily just kind of disregarded because these are the player characters, and just things are going to have to the plot's going to have to move forward one way or another.
yeah, yeah.
But the all the information about the culture, the society, the times that I've crammed into this book really also has a practical use in that this is information that the players' characters are actually going to have to make use of in order to navigate this world. For instance, the extended rest times actually kind of really seamlessly feed into this, where the player characters, of course, they're adventurers, they're out on the road, they're traveling. But in this Iron Age coinless barter economy world, there are
Based on
not,
cows.
yeah, but there are no inns, there are no taverns. What you have are these things called hostels, but more like the player characters are just going to have to rely on the sacred customs of hospitality that are such a big deal in this
Mhm.
culture. So your player
Yeah.
characters are going to have to approach NPC's cottage and ask to be let in for their short rest of 8 hours for the night. And if they
Ah,
can't interact with the NPCs in that culture effectively and like play the rules of hospitality to their benefit, then they're gonna maybe miss out on a few rests here and there. So,
I think that's fascinating.
oh yeah, and there are just
Because
countless other ways where just the social interactions are integral to the gameplay and setting up success in those combats.
well, and integrating, like you said, the rules of hospitality, I think that's a fascinating take because it's one for one so much more authentic to the human experience, like up until like a couple hundred years ago, I guess, like where these inns and hostels and bars and but like I
Yeah.
mean, as far as like my limited understanding of the human existence, if you were traveling like these adventurers travel, there was not gonna be an inn every like
Yeah.
30 miles for you to like lay your head at. You were gonna be either like hoofing it, or yeah, you were gonna be at the mercy of kind strangers. So
And
and yeah,
oh,
go
well, I
ahead.
was just going to observe that, and also your typical medieval fantasy inn or tavern nowadays. Uh, we have shorthanded it, and almost like, if you know the phrase, flanderized it to such a extent that players practically just interact with your typical medieval fantasy inn like it's a Starbucks.
Right, yeah. I carry a couple products in my store, and I try to really push them on all ages and skills of Dungeon Master. Like, one I really like is the Twisted Tavern product that's has 10 pre-generated taverns, and they all have like every NPC that's in the tavern has its own like stat block with secrets that agendas because taverns have become the most like they become the least textured part of most people's games
Yeah, because everybody
when
kind of
they
has this
actually have
image of
the
what they
most
are.
potential. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
everyone's
and
just
they
kind of
could
yada
be the
yada
most.
yada. Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, go right ahead. I
But
didn't mean to
no, no,
talk over
please, yeah, I'm loving it, man. A couple more questions just to try to get some more interesting stuff out. So, is there a big bad in your book? Is there like I assume there must be some monsters maybe in the back, right? Some unique monsters to your setting.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Is
only
there
have
any in your book that you would say like that's the big bad that I made? Like that's the one I would not want to go up against in combat.
definitely. Well, so yeah, well, there are not too many stat blocks in the player's guide. This is all going to be fodder for a hopefully upcoming book in the future. Just a whole book of monsters and
Oh,
NPCs and
cool. Yeah,
everything.
you're working on a monster
Oh
tome.
yeah, I want to do the whole classic trilogy. I got the player's guide, so I want to do a book of monsters and then a game master's guide. We're not done yet. There's a whole lot more material to get into, but so the quintessential antagonists in Irish mythology are these like these primordial monstrous giants called the Fomorians. They're kind of
Oh yeah,
yeah, they're comparable. You've probably come across them just in D&D monster
yeah, yeah,
books. They've
yeah.
been
They're
brought
present in
up
5e.
exactly, and they're kind of analogous to like the giants or the Jotun of Norse mythology and the Titans of Greek mythology. They're
Hmm.
just these elemental primordial beings that are opposed to the pantheon of gods, and I'd say the mightiest among them in Irish mythology. This is not a character that I made up, but is straight out of the source material. Is this giant who is practically heralded as walking destruction incarnate, called Balor of the Evil Eye, and he's got
Valor
this
of the Evil Eye.
yeah, and he's got this one bulging eye in the middle of his forehead that is usually closed with a heavy lid over it. And he has to get like these henchmen to winch it up. He's like a little winch apparatus to open it up because the lid is so heavy. But whenever it
Whoa,
is opened, anything that Badlore looks upon is immediately reduced to ash and cinder. It is an all destroying eye.
this sounds like a mechanic I don't want to dance with.
No, this stat block is going to be nightmarish. He's probably
Yeah,
CR 20 at least. He's up there.
yeah. Do you think the
It, it,
players like an average party does? It sounds like in order to beat him, they might need to like actually target that whatever mechanism that is that's helping to hold his eye open. Do you think that's?
that would be a good bet. This guy's killed gods though, so I mean, this might be a god level threat even beyond the party. I'm not sure.
It kind of sounds like it,
Yeah.
unless you could surprise him and keep that eye closed somehow. Like if all the man has to do is glance at you and
Oh yeah,
you're toasted.
and of course, on
Um,
top of that, he's just an immense giant and everything. So, but
Forgive me for my ignorance here. Is Beowulf a Celtic tale?
Beowulf is Germanic. Beowulf is Anglo-Saxon. That's the source we have it from. It was kind of written in like I believe the 800s by
Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon Christians in England, but originally it came from Denmark, is where it's based.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I only asked because I've always liked the tale of Grendel, and Grendel gives me Fomorian vibes.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
There's definitely a lot of thematic overlap there for sure.
yeah, one of the one shots I wrote was actually an adaptation of the story of Beowulf. It was super fun. Like the when the players got to the town, like there was like a sound ordinance in the
Hmm.
town where you couldn't get over a certain volume, and all drinking had been banned in the town. Which for any
Oh,
adventuring
sure.
party, that's a problem that they're gonna set about solving. Like they went
Exactly.
straight to the bar, and the bar's like no booze. They're like what? And then
Right.
they're
Yeah.
like
You
we're
don't want to.
motivated. Tell us more.
Yeah. Don't want to
Uh,
wake up the monster. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, honestly, now what I want to bring us back to is because we went on a cool arc there. We talked about how you got started. We talked about some of the cool content in your book. Although I did want to hear before I move on to this last segment, I wanted to hear what your favorite class was in your book.
Okay, so yeah, I actually didn't describe the classes. So this might sound odd, but they're actually, even though I've tossed out all the original classes,
Hmm.
I've only replaced them with three. How does that sound
Oh,
to you right off the
there's
top? Does
there's
that sound?
three main classes in the game. Very
Yeah,
cool.
it might seem a little slim, like oh, only three classes, but each of them then have three subclasses that are a lot more impactful, I believe, than your typical 5e subclasses. So they really diversify each one into
So it
practically
almost turns
nine
into like
classes.
it almost turns into nine classes after
Almost
that
practically,
subclass
yeah.
decision. Hmm.
And each of these classes is kind of based off of an archetype that is provided by one of the big heroes in the source material. Up at the top of this conversation, you asked me what are some big names that you might recognize, and I gave you Fian McCool and Cuchulainn. These guys, like I said, they're kind of the big heroes of Irish mythology. Like I said, the Odysseus and the Hercules or whatever. So these guys kind of provided the models and the archetypes that I built these classes on. Fian McCool gave the model for a class called the Fenid, which is basically my take on the Ranger.
Okay.
And I was pretty happy to throw my hat into that ring because everybody has their own idea of how to improve the Ranger.
Yeah, because we
And
all know we all know something's wrong, but everybody has different ideas about how to fix it.
oh yeah, I like to think I got pretty close to the mark on that one. But
I can't wait to see it myself.
oh yeah, and then we got the Warrior of the Red Branch, directly based on Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn, if you don't know about him, he's the basically just this kind of berserker type who literally mutates in the middle of battle and like goes Incredible Hulk and just
So it
messes
sounds like
everything
your
up.
barbarian slash fighter slash.
Barbarian fighter, definitely he's got a D12 hit die. If
Hmm.
that tells you anything. The
It
big
does. It
bruiser.
does. That's
Um,
our smacky brute brute.
oh yeah. And then finally, for our casters, we got a class called the Philly, Fili, with a little accent comma on that last I there. But that's basically your all-purpose sage and mystic. This culture and society is one that is very steeped in mysticism and otherworldly practices and such. And so this guy can subclass into being your druid, your bard, or this other role in society that is unique to Irish mythology or Irish society called the Brehon. So this guy is kind of like the all-purpose wise man of the village, but he can
Oh,
really
very cool.
diversify with different spell lists and everything like
Be
that.
like your healer or your damager.
Depends on the subclass choice,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. It's kind of
Yeah,
sounded like that's where you're gonna branch that out, and they can kind of like tune themselves one way or another. Very,
exactly.
very cool.
Yep.
And out of those, if you were gonna start a game right now, like which one would you just like have to play first, like yourself?
Fenid.
Bennett.
I would go Fenid. I would subclass into what's called the warrior poet, and I
Oh,
would
I love the
basically
sound of it.
oh yeah, and I would basically just try to play essentially just an Irish Aragorn, I guess. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Super cool, man. And so I love that. We've heard about some classes, we've heard about some monsters. One more like kind of game content question before I go back to the creation of it. Um, what would you say sets this game apart from traditional Dungeons and Dragons the most?
I'd say it's all the source material in which is grounded, all the research that I put into that source material,
Mm,
and the purpose of this book, which is to just monomaniacally simulate that world. That was the big idea, was just bringing these themes and aesthetics to life and in a way that is meaningful. And like I say, this
yeah,
is not just a setting that is inspired by Celtic things. It doesn't just borrow Celtic aesthetics. It is
yeah.
as best as I
Uses
can
those.
manage. Yeah, it's like a distillation of these very real stories, which yeah, there are so many wonderful games in the scene. But sometimes these original fantasy settings all just kind of start to bleed together with the same tropes. So when you know that
Yeah,
you're playing
elves,
with something that's
orcs.
in a sense real, that kind of
Yeah,
changes it. Yeah.
I'm loving that from hearing about it. I mean, I definitely would be saying nothing but nice things in an interview with you either way, but genuinely hearing about it, the historical through line and just the The idea of it being just slight, and I'm personally, I also really love like Celtic and Irish, and I mean, I love all kinds of mythology, I always have, but it sounds really cool to me to like learn more about that while I'm also getting to play a game that I love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And if it feels really cool, sounds really cool to me to take some of that D&D energy that I'm putting into these like fantasy worlds and like get something just maybe a little bit more authentic out of that time and that effort. So
Hmm.
very cool.
If
So to
I could,
wrap this up, if we talked about the creation, so I kind of got myself off track a little bit and went ahead and started asking you about game mechanics. So you start making it. It started off intended for you and your friends. Let's leave on this note. When was the moment when it caught into something just a little bit more, and what was that like? And what was the process like when you going from a tiny little project on your laptop to like I've published it and I'm selling copies.
well, I'll lay this out in a way to try to give hope to anybody who is, dreaming of doing the same thing. It is possible. If I can do it, anybody with the appropriate amount of passion can do it, because really, passion is all it took. I mean, also, you had to be handy at writing if you want to write a book, but
Yeah,
uh,
you gotta put the work in.
yeah. But honestly, I got through on just sheer dumb blind passion and good luck of finding help from the right people along the way. After I
Mm.
had gotten the Word document to such and such a length, and I said to myself, oh, well, this really is something. I better start trying to actually make this into something real, take it on the road. I just started off on, as me on my lonesome, making really pathetic amateur attempts at self promotion on Facebook, making my own
Nice. Yeah,
posts and everything on
classic.
Facebook groups and Reddit groups, just
Not that that's
oh well, when I say pathetic, keep in mind I only speak for myself. But
Oh yeah, yeah. I was just teasing.
it was my good luck that one of these posts happened to be found by a freelance promotions person, a person to whom I will forever be in debt by the name of Daniel. And Daniel just approached me out of the blue, got in touch over Facebook or some such platform, and said, "Hey, I've seen what you're doing here. I'd like to help." He got on board, and with expertise such as that, he really brought, the expertise that I needed, actual directed promotional strategy where we started tracking down the right people, getting in touch with influencers, collecting mailing lists, all of these like practical business things that frankly myself as an archaeologist and a writer, I have no idea about. I had no experience or qualifications in book publishing whatsoever. But from there, once I got Daniel on my side and we started getting a little bit better at promotion, I then started to find some artists, commissioned a few pieces of art so
Oh.
that we can, make a nice pitch. Took that pitch to Kickstarter, did the old crowdfunding thing, and I don't know if this is just a, the appropriate result of hard work or blind luck. Happened to maybe be the day of the week, but the Kickstarter was a resounding success. And from there, we were off to the races. The I will give a warning to anybody who is going to try to recreate this story of success. Don't start a Kickstarter until your Word manuscript document, your manuscript, is completely finished. I
Good
yeah,
advice.
production was slowed down considerably because I had not yet completed the manuscript before getting into Kickstarter.
And all of a
I
sudden you see all this support coming in and you're like, holy cow, I have
better
to
get
finish this
serious.
product. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I thought, it was going to be, I was at 125 pages and I thought, oh, I must be only about halfway through. This is probably going to be 250 pages by the time I'm done. I can write the rest of this in like a few months and, we'll be sailing smooth. But it just, the project ran away with me because I let my passion take the wheel, and the
Yeah,
book
you
ended
wanted
up.
it to be, I mean, if you wanted it to be, not to use the word masterpiece, but you wanted to be able to put your heart behind it.
If this was going to be my one chance, I wanted to put absolutely everything I could into it. So it ended
Amazing.
up being this thick. That is
Wow.
406
Yeah, can you show us
pages.
the cover too, real quick?
Yeah.
Oh,
There we go.
awesome, man. Oh, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So this turned out to be 406 pages long, which is why the production period took two going on 3 years, I believe it took to make. We ran that Kickstarter back in maybe '02, published in '02, 22. I don't know where my brain was, like
Yep,
two
yep,
decades removed there for a second. But yeah, we
yep,
ran
yep.
it in
Got a spot of
22.
90s, baby.
Yeah, published in 24. So it was a long, kind of harrowing production sequence, but I learned a lot. And I always just learned by doing. I was just laying down the railroad track right in front of me the whole way, just figuring it out. But looking back, it really just kind of feels like this chaotic sequence of events that somehow fell into place just right. And wherever it hitched up, I just had to put my head down and plow through. And somehow I made it out the other side. So, as I said, if I can do it, anybody can. You just have to be insanely passionate about whatever topic you've chosen to cover.
Well, I love that inspiration, Jacob, and I will put a bow on this for our listeners. So I've been having a lot of these conversations lately, and I'm hearing a lot of themes. And what you're saying right now is the same thing I've been seeing in everybody that I'm talking to that are like getting their ideas off the ground, their projects off the ground. Which is there's some common elements that need to be there. Which is one, the passion, right? You need to be doing it for you. And if our listeners are listening hey Cole, if they're listening, then I think what I'm starting to take away from these conversations is like, yeah, you need to be doing it for you first. That's one of the things. Like you need to love it enough that you would do it regardless of whether or not someone was paying you for it.
Yeah, and if that's not there, don't even start. Like if
Yeah,
you're
if
not
that's not there,
feeling
don't
it,
start.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because like, I mean, sure, you might find some other project you could do that's purely a monetary project, but like, if you're looking for something like this, like where it's going to be your passion and you're looking to like turn your dreams into some kind of a reality, I think that's really key. There is that you need to be willing to do it 100% regardless of monetary kickback. And then I'm seeing some other things, which is one thing I want to tell everybody is you will know when it catches. Like I have gone after 100 projects. Like I have had 1,000 wild ideas, and I've convinced friends to quit jobs to try those wild ideas. I've convinced them to move into different locations, and I've convinced people to join in on some really harebrained schemes, and 99% of them have fallen short. But that's always been kind of who I was. And then as I got older, I started to be able to differentiate between some of my schemes that were just that harebrained schemes, and then when I got just a little bit older was when I started to be able to tell, like, and now when something catches, I now know that it has. I would have known regardless. Like when it catches, the same way you like put it on Kickstarter, and all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, I need to react to this.
Mm-hmm.
When I opened my game store, it started off as actually, even when I just had the idea to open my game store and I started doing it, I could tell immediately that this was gonna work. When Christina Amrine, one of my last interviewees, when she started doing her snake rescue like operation that she's doing, she could tell immediately that it was like there was a need for her. She was busy, like within a couple weeks of getting started.
Yeah, if
So
you're doing something right, your audience will let you know.
right,
Because that's what's kept me going is the feedback. Because just, I mean, I've been doing something right, being guided by just doing what I love, because people can feel that.
yeah.
They get the sense, and if you're
Yeah,
saying that,
same thing with the shop. People
yeah,
feel when they come in that my heart's really in it. When I say like thank you so much for coming, like they know I really friggin' mean that. Like
yeah,
that's not cookie cutter like
yeah.
choreographed speech.
No, if it's something that resonates with you, it will bounce off of you and resonate with others. They will pick up
Yeah.
that vibe.
Yeah, and so what I'm taking away from this, guys, if you're listening, is like just do what you love, man. Just keep doing what you love. And I know sometimes it can take a really long time, like longer than I would like it for people,
It can be
for
tough.
doing that thing that they love to kick back and and maybe even start providing for them in a way. But I
Hmm.
promise, just keep doing what you love, and you'll know when it catches. And also throw stuff against the wall. Because it sounds like you got really lucky. You threw this against the wall, you got that kickback, but and for those of you that have already tried that, and maybe something didn't stick, but you feel like you followed all of the same patterns that Jacob and I are here talking about. I just try again. I promise. Just keep throwing stuff against the wall.
Keep
Like,
going.
write your next book, write your next thing. I'll share a lesson that my dad always told me. I think I've already shared this on my podcast once, but he would go, Evan, do you know what almost every greatest writer of all time had in common? And after I guessed a couple things that were wrong, he would say, no,
Drinking problem?
yeah, yeah, exactly. They're all crazy. He
Yeah.
would say, no, all of the greatest writers of all time wrote almost every day.
Mm,
Um, and that was one of the only common themes that we can see between them is they were so addicted to writing that they just wrote every day. And if
hmm
we were to ask Edgar Allan Poe, man, hey man, how much of your work did you like? He would probably tell you none of it. He would probably tell
Yeah.
you it's all garbage. He
Yep.
might point to one poem and be like, this is the only thing I ever did that was any good. And everybody else is standing around him being like, nah, dog, you're like one of the greats. But
hmm
we're all so hard on ourselves. So that would be my other big lesson is what I'm taking from Jacob here is Jacob sounds like he's just his whole life just done what he loved. And here he is. And he's just, he didn't start writing this book for anybody but himself, but he could tell immediately that he had something cool. And I promise you guys, if you want the same kind of results, it's kind of the same process. Just be doing what you love, and then one day something is going to kind of kick back to you, and it could take 20 or 30 years, and that sucks. But you could also get lucky, and it could catch
hmm
tomorrow. And the only way you will get that to catch is if you just start throwing stuff against the wall.
What
Uh,
matters is that you have to not care if it never takes off. Like
yes, I completely
you have
agree.
to be okay with that. Like, I thought to myself, this book might never take off.
Right,
And it's
and you
still
had to
kind
want
of,
to put the energy in
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like even if only one person ever reads this, that'll be enough for me, you know.
Well, that is the beyond the big top message, right? That's exactly what this podcast is about. It's not actually about promoting games or promoting me or promoting anybody. It's actually about trying to share some of my own success with people. And the best way I think I can do that is to help them take action on their own dreams. And that's what the podcast is really about. Obviously the marketing kickback is cool. Everybody buy a copy of this man's book, please, and come by my store and give me a bunch of your money. That'd be cool.
hmm Oh yeah.
But really, honestly, the motivation here is to just put this kind of cool story out there. So thank you so much, Jacob, for
Yes.
talking today. Is there anything
Absolutely.
you want to leave any listeners with?
Yeah, if I can just plug real quick, if
Yeah.
the description of this book has sounded interesting to you, try and find us on Discord. There is a Heroes of Tara Discord community. You'll be more than welcome. The book itself can be found and purchased in hardcover, printed, or digital PDF form on drivethrurpg.com.
Drivethrurpg.com. I know that source. That's a really cool source for stuff like what you're doing. So everybody, that's Heroes of Tara, drivethrurpg.com. Also, we are going to have a demo copy probably at some point in the future.
Oh
And
yeah,
we're also going to buy a couple copies of Jacob's book here because we think it's a cool product. And we're excited to have a couple copies in the shop. We'll be maybe one of the only brick and mortar stores around that you can find it. So if you want to come and like handle the book and look at some of the stuff, and if you want to show Jacob here some support, head over, purchase a copy of his book. Just even if it's just to send the dream, because we're out here. Um, yeah, and Jacob, thank you so much for coming on. I'll call you in a little bit on the cell phone after we hang up here, and we can like decompress after the conversation. But this was so cool talking to you, man. And yeah, this has been Beyond the Big Top. I'll call you in just a little bit.
great. Hey, thanks so much for having me on, Evan. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this with everybody. It's been a great honor.
Yeah, yeah, you were awesome to talk to, man. Honestly, you're wildly intelligent and super super skilled. I can tell at what you're doing. So that was really fun for me.
Great. Hey,
Um,
let's keep in touch. Talk some more.
yeah, yeah. Talk to you soon.
Take it easy, man.
Yeah.